Well, happy Easter, everyone. This week we are, of course, celebrating Resurrection Day, the day that Jesus rose from the dead, letting us know that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of the living God. And so today we're going to get a chance to talk about that and some of the many scriptures that talk about his death and his third day resurrection. So what we're going to do is we're going to get started by looking at some passages that we talked about at the Good Friday service, and that is the passages that talk about Jesus' death. I gave you just a couple on the half sheet here, and they are ones that I think the writers of Scripture wrote down because they helped to show for them that Jesus was really dead. He was actually dead. And in fact, they even shared some scriptures here to talk about his death being a death that matches the prophecies about the Messiah. So there's two things going on here. One is proving that Jesus actually died, and the other is letting us know that he died in the way that God said the Messiah would die. So take a look at those passages, talk about that a little bit. Why do you think that these things convinced them that Jesus was dead and that he was the Messiah? And then just talk about that for yourself. What would have convinced you? What even convinces you today that Jesus did die on that Good Friday and that he was really dead when they laid him in the tomb? Talk about that a little bit, and when you're ready to go on to the good news, let's go ahead and press play to continue. Well, you probably already know the story. On Sunday morning, the first day of the week, there were women who went to take burial spices to not really embalm the body, but to put spices that kept the smell down, I guess, for his body. And they couldn't go on Saturday, that was the Sabbath, and so they went on Sunday morning, which was their first day of the week. And as they did that, they got there, and the stone that was in front of the tomb and had sealed the tomb had been rolled back, and the tomb was empty. I gave you some passages there to read, just showing you all the different accounts and how they can fit together really nicely. And so I encourage you to take a moment to read those. But just talk about that. How would you have reacted if you got there and found out that the stone was rolled back and the tomb was empty? Ladies end up going back and telling the disciples. Peter and John do the same kind of thing. They run to the tomb to make sure that the stone was rolled back and the tomb was empty, and that's in fact what happened. So how would you have reacted if you found it that way? Talk about that a little bit with your group, and when you're ready to go on to the next section, press play to continue. Well, if you know the story, you know that the women didn't just find the tomb empty, but there was someone there. It was actually an angel, a messenger of the Lord that was there that told them, why are you looking for Jesus among the dead? He's alive. And that was enough to convince them to run back and tell the other disciples, hey, the tomb was empty, and we ran into this guy who said, that Jesus is alive. And they started telling people. Peter and John went, found the tomb empty, and eventually they started telling people. Now, on the flip side, the guards that were there, they were embarrassed and also didn't want to die for shirking their duties, and they ended up going back telling the chief priests of the law that that what happened, and they said, okay, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to pay you off, pay you some money. You need to tell everybody that the disciples stole the body. And so the word got out really fast in both directions. One is that Jesus is alive. The other is that the disciples stole the body. And so my question for you is, what would have convinced you that Jesus is alive so that you started spreading that information rather than the rumor that, oh, they just stole the body and they're trying to make a big deal out of it? Talk about that with your group. If you were in that situation, what would convince you that Jesus was alive after you saw that he was dead? When you're ready to go on to the last section, press play to continue. Well, of course, Jesus didn't leave it up to angels to do all the heavy lifting here either. He took the time to start showing up to people one-on-one, one-on-two. He showed up with small groups of people, sometimes large groups of people. He kept showing up for 40 days after that day even, so that people could see that he was in fact alive. In fact, the scripture writers include things like he ate broiled fish. In other words, this wasn't just a ghost. It wasn't just a vision. This was a real live human being who gets hungry and can eat. And so that was there. So my question just kind of dovetails with the last question and the last set of scriptures that you had. And that is, do you believe that Jesus actually died and rose from the dead on the third day in fulfillment of the scriptures? Have you had an encounter where you just know that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of the living God? And do you share that with people? Can I encourage you, just like the disciples here, be his witness. Share with somebody today. Share with somebody this Easter week that Jesus is alive. And because of that, we can come home to God without fear. Know that I'm praying for you, and I encourage you to pray for one another, build each other up in the faith that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of the living God. And we know that because he was once dead, but now he is alive. God bless.